Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes, and welcome to my 105th video, which means it has been 2 times 52, which is 52 weeks in a year, so that means that it's been 2 years, give or take. But I'm calling it my 2-year anniversary because it's easier to add multiples of 52 together than to, remember actual dates. So, I've been talking about books now once a week, give or take, for 2 years, and I thought in celebration to mark this 2-year point, I would do a video about the other major thing that I read. Now, some people read magazines, some people read the newspaper a lot. I don't read the newspaper as much as I ought to because I find it incredibly um, uh, either depressing, uninteresting, or interesting in ways I'd rather it wasn't. But be that as it may, I try to keep vaguely on top of current affairs, but the one thing that I do read a lot, and I've mentioned this before, is fan fiction. So we're going to take a brief walk into fan fiction, into why I like fan fiction, into why I read fan fiction, and indeed why writing it is a hobby of mine, even though I will not in fact take you to see where any of my fan fiction is, because for personal historic reasons I have left up things that I wrote when I was 16, and well, we all know that things that we wrote when we were 16 are not necessarily things that we want people reading now that we're adults. So, fan fiction. Let's start with the alpha and the omega of all fan fiction websites. This is one of the longest standing fan fiction websites on the internet. It is a website with history, with a long memory, with a lot of people who dislike it intensely, and in some ways for many of the same reasons that people dislike YouTube. And that is fanfiction.net. Fanfiction.net has been around now for, at least 20 years. This is the original fanfiction website. As you can see, we have fanfiction subcategories: anime, manga, books, cartoons, comics, games, miscellaneous movies, plays, television, and they have a separate section that they've carved out now for crossovers. In each of these sections, and let's go for books because, well, we talk about books. This is a list here, as I roam down the screen, of all of the various fandoms that people have written fan fiction in and for on this website. I want you to note, over on the right, over here, you can see where the scroll bar is. I'm not even halfway down the page. And yet, we're still going. And going, and going, and going, and going, and going, and going. Now, admittedly, by the time we get down here, these down the far right here now are fandoms that have one story in it only, and you can see here in the middle only 4 stories, and on the right here we're down to 31. So, obviously, there are smaller fandoms, smaller collections of stories, places where there have been fewer people who write fanfics. But when you scroll back up to the top, Harry Potter, 783K, 783,000 individual stories. That's a lot. That's a lot of writing. That's a lot of people doing this. And this is just this one site. This does not contain all of the fan fiction on the internet. This contains a significant portion of it. A lot of people wind up posting on here simply because everyone posts on here. They post on here because they don't have anybody who keeps track. They don't have monitors. They don't have anyone who does any sort of quality check, which means anyone and everyone can post here. But it remains a tremendous central source to look for things if what you're looking for is fan fiction. Over here, we have the much more recently created Archive of Our Own. Archive of Our Own, as they say on this site, you can see here, a fan-created, fan-run, non-profit, non-commercial archive for transformative fan works. This doesn't run off of advertising the way fanfiction.net does. AO3 works off of charity donations from people who want this site to continue running. And again, if you look at this, books and literature, and we start scanning down through this, we've only just hit A. But there are so many. Anita Blake, Vampire Hunter, 608. Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe, 112. We're scanning down through this, and I want you to note also, I am just wrote that this is in purely alphabetical order, and so to compare this to fanfiction.net, which sorts by popularity rather than by alphabetical order unless you specifically ask it to. This particular site, as you can see, is purely alphabetical, I assume, unless you find some other way of sorting. And this is another general website. You do need to go through something of an entry process for this one, something I have never bothered to do in particular. But the fact is, this and fanfiction.net are two landing strips if all you're looking for is fan fiction. Fan fiction exists in fan-specific sites. A Teaspoon and an Open Mind, which is a Doctor Who fanfiction archive, and as you can see, with 20,588 stories specific to the 10th Doctor, there are a lot of fanfics here. There are a lot of stories. There are a lot of things that are being told. Now, when people ask about fan fiction, when they ask why people read fan fiction or like fan fiction or write fan fiction, there are several answers, and some of them are the ones that people snicker at and point and laugh at. Certainly, there's a lot of people who read or write fan fiction because, oh my god, I totally want to see Buffy and Angel get together, Buffy and Angel forever, or Doctor and Rose forever, or, oh wow, I think those two guys are so hot, I totally want to see them getting it on. Those are things that people want, and they read or write fan fiction because that's what they want to see or want to have the story told. But fan fiction does other things. Now, the thing about fan fiction is that, as with any other work of art, any other work of fiction, to quote Sturgeon's Law, 90% of everything is crap. But the fact is that leaves a 10% which isn't, and 10% of fan fiction is not crap. And if you're going to assume that every single bit of it is crap, then I would like to remind you of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead by Tom Stoppard, which is the essence of the best of what fan fiction is. It is a story that looks at two minor characters and asks what was happening with them. I've seen a lot of fan fictions where people write stories about people other than the main characters and what was happening with them during that episode. Stories of what happened behind the main character's back. Stories of what other people were doing or thinking. It's a story that asks broader... Tom Stoppard's play asks broader and different questions about things other than the issues in Hamlet, because the Hamlet backdrop provides Stoppard with the opportunity to bring up things or ask things that aren't part of Hamlet. And fan fiction does that too. It looks at the silliness or the ridiculousness of the world that Shakespeare created, and the best of fan fiction does this. Fan fiction doesn't only act to provide you with an opportunity to make Buffy the Vampire Slayer have, as we can see here in Lord of the Rings, crossovers on Twisting the Hellmouth. It doesn't only act so that you can read the story where Buffy has a wild affair with Legolas. It doesn't only work so that you can read the story where Xander Harris winds up in a relationship with Daniel Jackson from Stargate. By the way, I am quoting actual specific fan fictions I have either seen or read. It doesn't speak to finding out a story where Buffy or Faith have exciting adventures in the Star Wars universe, or where Willow turns out to be somebody's long-lost daughter, which happens in a lot of fan fictions, frequently in Harry Potter because Willow's a redhead and Weasley's. I mean, certainly one of the great things about fan fiction is the opportunity to do a crossover between two fandoms that it can never happen with because the actors in one fandom are too old now to return to those particular things, to those particular roles, and the people who own the rights to the other show would never do it. But fan fiction allows you to bring up or ask questions about how to critique a show, not through an essay, not through formal writing, through nonfiction, through prose analysis, but through the meta-criticism of writing a work of fiction which attacks those questions and asks about them. One of the fandoms that does this a lot is the Katara Zuko subset of the Avatar The Last Airbender fandom, which asks, are Katara and Aang, do they really belong together? Aang is 12. Katara is 14. Does that really lead to a significant, long-lasting relationship? Katara and Aang, the Katara Zuko fans, the Zutara fans, as they are known colloquially, tend to ask a lot of questions about Aang's refusal to kill the Fire Lord, precisely because they have been put in a position of antagonism with fans of the Avatar Aang. And it's not that necessarily people, and I apologize for all of this photo bucket picturing here. I don't know whether it's me or LiveJournal, but it stopped showing a lot of the pictures that people used to have down the sides. But Zutara fans, because they're in a position of saying, we don't like Aang with Katara, we like Zuko with Katara, they're usually in a position of pointing out the awkwardness of how Aang acted with Katara, the way that Katara becomes an object for Aang, a point that he can achieve and not a person in her own right, that the show reduces her in that way, and it is objectionable. It's objectionable the way that Aang refuses to kill the Fire Lord, which on the one hand can seem a triumph of peace and love for all things over the orthodoxy of killing. But you ask the question, leaving the Fire Lord, somebody as clever and ambitious and dangerous as Fire Lord Ozai, leaving him alive, is that really a good thing to do, politically speaking? Isn't it dangerous to leave somebody who could be a rallying point for people who don't like the New Order? And people ask these questions by writing fan fiction. So you can say most of fan fiction is middle-aged women who are looking for smut that meets their own needs, which, for the record, that just indicates that the porn industry is falling down tremendously, that people have to write their own porn in order to find something that fulfills their needs. But it's not just that. It's people asking questions about the things that they watch, the things that they read. It's about people wanting to inhabit these worlds and to see more of them and to express this in art. So you can think as little of it as you want, but fan fiction is a central thing, and it's a thing that we all do at some point in our lives whenever we ask what if about a work of fiction.